Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the FAS Year Up Breakfast. I just want to make sure that you all heard the music this morning. And I saw in the chat that you were excited with the playlist. We want to acknowledge Megan for doing this. It's sort of like set the right tone. We're upbeat, we have new beginnings, and we are ready for an event that's going to sort of rejuvenate your mind and also your experiences with wonderful, wonderful people. But let's start it on a sort of a traditional note. And I want to first state that this is an inclusive event. And as we've done at other diversity events, we want to first start by acknowledging and share Harvard's Land and People Acknowledgement. Harvard University is located on the traditional and ancestral land of the Massachusetts, the original inhabitants of what is now known as Boston and Cambridge. We pay respect to the people of Massachusetts tribe, past and present, and honor the land itself, which remains sacred to the Massachusetts people. This Land and People Acknowledgement was prepared by the Harvard University Native American Program, and I encourage you to share it at your meetings as well. We're now in March, or almost the end of March, but February was Black History Month. So I wanted to again acknowledge those enslaved at Harvard. We honor the memory of Titus, Venus, Bella, and Juba, who lived and worked at Harvard as enslaved persons during the presidencies of Benjamin Wordsworth and Edward Holyoke in the 1700s. This acknowledgement is excerpted from a plaque placed at Wordsworth House by former Harvard President Drew Faust and the late US Representative John Lewis in the spring of 2016. At that time, President Faust said, "The past never dies or disappears, continues to shape us in ways we should try to not erase or ignore." These words ring true today. Also, in 2000, as it shaped the mind of a young man, Gerald Chertavian, who was a successful technology entrepreneur and Wall Street banker. After many years of being a volunteer in Big Brother, he found his true calling and established Year Up. I think, Gerald, I'm not sure, but you probably will remember these words. And this is what Gerald said when he founded Year Up, or about when he was thinking about going into Year Up. He said, "I'm hopeful we'll build a country that sees the potential inherent in all our young people, not just the ones born in the right zip code." Think about that. Think about what I just read. And think about how important it is for us to think about the ways we shape our future, the ways in which history influences us, and the ways in which we carve out new paths for people behind us, or in front of us, or beside us. Just take a moment and think. Okay, before we get started, I would like to share a few guidelines with you. We ask that you remain on mute unless you're speaking. If you have questions, please place them in the chat. We have reserved time for question and answer after the end of the presentation. And if we're not able to respond to your questions, we will make sure we do them before the end of the day, okay? If there's something that's particularly relevant to one of the speakers, we ask that you also place that in the chat, and if possible, we'll address it. So again, I started off by saying that I was excited, and I'm actually excited because the last time that we had our breakfast was in 2020. In 2020, we changed from in-person breakfast at the Thompson Room to a virtual breakfast, all right? And, you know, in thinking about this, I thought back to 2020 and I'm saying, oh my gosh, a lot of things changed. We were forced to think of new ways to engage, interact, work, and survive. In 2020, I left Harvard and went home to remote work. When I went back on campus, my calendar was frozen March of 2020. All right. But then I thought back, the change just did not affect Harvard University. It was also felt across the world. Um, you know, in the workplace, we had to learn to manage the changes. Employers implemented new administrative and operational systems. A new emphasis was placed upon employee classification in that there was now a laser focus on essential, non-essential, critical workers. There was also a shift to flexible remote work or hybrid schedule. As managers and employees adjusted to the new norm, there was also a great emphasis placed on finding the appropriate technology to manage our remote location. At Harvard, in support for research and teaching mission, Harvard made several changes, and they're still making changes to their operational and administrative systems. So here we go. It's still not done. Throughout this period of uncertainty, Europe has partnered with Harvard and several other organizations to provide staff who are able to support our business. So the theme for today's breakfast is the changing workplace, pivoting to the new norm. Our speakers will share their thought about the topic, changing workplace and pivoting to the new norm. But before we get to that point, I want to just share a few little points for those folks who may not know about Europe or who may need to be reminded about Europe. Europe is a nonprofit organization, which, as I indicated earlier on, was established by Jared Tartavian, who is going to be one of the speakers you're going to hear from today. He was a Wall Street banker, but again, he saw the need to establish Europe, okay? Europe provides eligible high school graduates and individuals who have not graduated from high school the opportunity to get their GED and enroll in formal 6-month internship classroom education, where they receive formal training in their concentrated tracks, including financial operations, project management, business operations, software development, and IT. I think for the folks who are on this call who have worked with Europe, you've had Europe interns who have come into our space at Harvard and have provided these services and have been extremely successful. You'll hear from some of those folks, or sorry, new employees, old employees, some of which have been here over 5 years, who are still doing those jobs. Want to share Europe's core values. It says respect and value others, build trust, be honest, be accountable, engage, and embrace diversity. The mission of Europe, in part, is to help to close the opportunity divide by helping young adults develop skills, experience, and support that will empower them to reach their potential through career pathways. Upon completion of their internship period, they are placed in corporate hands-on workplace skill application internship roles, like Harvard. Again, you're going to hear from interns who are in those roles. Europe was established in 2003 at Harvard, and in 2001, FAS started their partnership. For this present cycle, and we're going to talk about cycles later on, we have 4 interns who have been placed in roles within the college, the Graduate School of Arts and Science, and also within other FAS areas. The program has a 50% conversion rate of interns. So I just want you all to focus on that, because as we look to staffing needs, this is an opportunity for us to have interns who know Harvard system, who can work closely with us. This would not have happened by itself if we didn't have a group of folks who have worked relentlessly to manage the program. We now have a steering committee that is Harvard-wide, because there was a need for us to expand and change the way we manage the Year Up program. We have a programs team, and these are folks who are in departments, schools, centers within Harvard. But I want to hold back a few things, and I want to introduce us to our new dean, Dean Scott Jordan. He's going to say a few words. And what I want to add, before we started this event this morning, Scott said, I'm a new person. I think he's new, but he's been here longer than a month, so he's not new anymore. But I want to just say this in a fun way. He joined us in August of 2021 from the University of Connecticut, and he was charged by Dean Day to help ensure a vibrant, diverse, and inclusive culture and workforce within Harvard. I think, you know, when I met with Scott and I said, guess what, Scott, we're going to have the Year Up breakfast, and I want you to be the speaker, and I want you to be a part of the breakfast. He said, okay, Etienne. And of course I'm saying, well, is he going to ask me about Year Up? He didn't. He already knew about Year Up. And I think his presence here today, in my mind, demonstrate his commitment to Year Up and to other diversity initiatives at Harvard. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Scott, who will give remarks and introduce the guest speaker. And I just want to tell you all, brace yourself for an amazing event. Scott, you're on.
Thank you, Etienne. And I do want to take a minute before I start talking to thank you and your team, not just for this event today, and Megan for the playlist, thank you for that, and Jess and the whole team for organizing this, but also, as you described, your relentless work over the last number of years to, as you said, to maintain this relationship with Year Up, and your commitment to finding ways to bring folks into the Harvard community. It's so important. So I do want to just take a minute to push the little clap button on my on my reaction thing here to acknowledge you and your team for the hard work that you do here at Harvard. Thank you. So Etienne is right. I'm not that new. I've been here now since August. And Harvard is a big and complex and exciting place to be. And it's going to probably take a whole career to actually figure out just how big and how broad and even what all the acronyms stand for. But that's fun and that's exciting. And it's why I'm here is to experience being part of the Harvard community. And I'm still sort of trying to articulate, really, if you go like to most universities or most organizations' websites, somewhere on there's a button that says, you know, what is our mission statement, right? And Harvard does not have that on its website right now. I don't know if it will, but it's implied. You know, Harvard is Harvard, right? And what is that? It means different thing to everybody, but you know, at its heart, Harvard is a place. Virtual and physical in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and Boston, Massachusetts, and worldwide. It's dedicated to the preservation and the creation and the sharing of knowledge and discovery. And wow, that's a big thing, right? And that not only is a place dedicated to that, but it's dedicated to really being the preeminent place in the world for this work. And that means that we need to be the place that attracts the best scholars, the best researchers, the best students, the best and the best staff, honestly, to support that work. And when we think about, you know, this high-minded notion of being the best in the world, it means that the world needs to be able to get here, like all the world, like all of the folks that can contribute to that mission need to find a way to Harvard. And there's not just one path. And we all know, you know, Harvard's got a long history, almost 400 years. And for a long time, there were limited paths, right? But it is our work to build as many paths as we need to bring everybody together that wants to be part and can be part of this community. And that's what I see Year Up as a path. It's a pathway folks that can be part of this work to become part of this work. And it's been very successful. You know, I was looking at some numbers, and we've had almost 300 interns over our time with Year Up. As Tane said, kind of blows my mind that almost 50% of those interns stay and become part of our permanent staff and part of this Harvard community. And we've had a couple of years now of COVID, and, you know, hopefully not pushing the metaphor too far here, but we've had this path, and we got to make sure that weeds don't grow up over it. We got to clear the path. And we've got an obligation as folks who are here to not just clear the path, but help other people along. If you're a Year Up alum, to reach out and pull folks along the path. If you're a Harvard employee and you know people that you think might fit in here in your life, you know, be proud, encourage people to apply for jobs here, and really, you know, clear as many paths as we can for folks of all types, all diverse experiences and lives and neighborhoods. And especially, one of the things Dean Gay and I talked about when I was interviewing was a commitment that I felt was important to be part of the greater Boston community too. Right? Not all paths need to sort of leap over 128. You know, not all searches need to be a global search for every job. There are plenty of good folks within the greater Boston community who can and should be part of the work that we do at Harvard. And in every neighborhood. And that's one of the things that Tiffany and I talked about when we were recruiting her. And I'm so proud today to not just be part of this effort, but to introduce to you our Associate Dean for Human Resources, who's actually really new. Tiffany Jadot comes to us from Boston Medical Center, where she spent a number of years as an HR leader there. She's rooted in the greater Boston area and has deep roots in work in recruitment and developing talent right here at home. And that's one of the projects she and I have going forward. And Year Up is going to be part of that work. And I'm so glad that we're able today to reboot this program, to clear some of that path out and maybe find ways to pave new paths to Harvard. So with that, I'll wrap up my comments and introduce to you Tiffany Jadot, our Associate Dean for Human Resources, who will introduce our guest speaker today. Tiffany?
Thank you, Scott, so much. And thank you all. This is an extremely, just an honor to be present and to be here. So Scott noted, I'm Tiffany Jadot, the Associate Dean of Human Resources at FAS, rounding out about 6 weeks at Harvard. So still looking at everything with a brand new lens, and it's really just been an amazing community to work in, and really great to work with all of you, and I will be meeting many of you, I'm sure, as well. But just really thrilled to be present at this morning's Year Up event, because it is a testament to a longstanding partnership and commitment to bridge the opportunity gap that is ever present in our nation. But especially, we're seeing it as being prevalent in the greater Boston communities. So I'm very excited and honored to introduce the visionary founder, Harvard Business School alum, and CEO of Year Up, Gerald Chertavian. And just a little bit of, I could spend probably the full time in speaking about Gerald's accomplishments and commitment to this work, but I want to highlight that Gerald is dedicated to closing the opportunity divide that exists in our nation. And determined to make his vision a reality, Gerald combined his entrepreneurial skills and his passion for working with young adults to found Year Up in 2000. And Gerald's commitment to working with young adults spans more than 25 years. His beginning, as Tane had noted, his career started on Wall Street as an officer of the Chemical Banking Corporation. Following graduate school at HBS, he co-founded Conduit Communications and fostered its growth to more than 18 million in annual revenues. and more than 130 employees in London, Amsterdam, New York, and Boston. Gerald, if you can't tell, I researched you in depth to be able to do you justice in your career. Following the sale of Conduit to iCube in 1999, Gerald turned his full attention to opportunities for others. He's proactively, actively participated in Big Brother mentoring programs since 1985. He was recognized as one of New York's outstanding Big Brothers in 1989, recipient of the 2003 Social Entrepreneurship Award by the Manhattan Institute, and 2005 Freedom House Archie R. Williams Jr. Technology Award. 2006, Gerald was elected as a fellow with the Ashoka Global Fellowship of Social Entrepreneurs. 2008, I was appointed by Massachusetts former Governor Deval Patrick to serve on the Mass State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education. And he was also appointed in 2013 by former Governor Patrick to serve as the chairman of Roxbury Community College Board of Trustees. I could say a lot more, but really Gerald's commitment to serving the youth in the opportunity divide and bringing forth the opportunities, especially to the underrepresented, marginalized communities, speaks volumes. So I want to just welcome Gerald Chertavian to the event, and just honored to be part in partnership with you.
First of all, Tiffany, thank you so very much, and welcome. Welcome to Harvard, Tiffany and Scott. Welcome to the Year Up family. We're really honored to have your support and to build our partnership with you. And want to start by saying a real sincere thanks. And also, Etain, you are one of my heroes. I have heroes in my life, and you are absolutely one of them, because you have, with passion and commitment and clarity and understanding, help to nurture our partnership, where more than 160 individuals have an opportunity to work full-time at Harvard, right? And to gain the economic mobility, to gain the family sustainability that they need and deserve. And I know you do it with an amazing team. And Megan and Jess, and today just organized the event. Thank you. But Etain, you absolutely live for me as someone who embodies what does it mean to build an equitable and inclusive community. And I thank you for that on behalf of all of our students at Year Up. Thank you. Harvard has been an amazing partner. I remember so well talking to John Palfrey in 2002. The very first intern was at Harvard Law School under John's leadership. And over the years, the leaders at Harvard who have said, we see the young adults that you serve as valuable, relevant talent, right? And that wasn't just one person at Harvard. It was a lot of leaders at Harvard. And it is incredible to me. You think about, why am I so proud of this? You know, as a graduate of Harvard, I'm so deeply proud of what this organization is doing, because it embodies two really important aspects. The first is, and Scott, you touched on this, that building a community, right? How does one build a community and invest in a community? I was reading last week about Harvard's expansion into Alston and the desire to have that be a community involved expansion, one that's inclusive. And I think Harvard, for the past, 20 years, has been building an inclusive partnership with Year Up that has touched hundreds and hundreds of individuals. That community is something I can testify to Harvard has been committed to for a long period of time, because you cannot have a healthy institution without a healthy community surrounding that institution. And with all the assets that Harvard has, and to bear witness to the number of young people who now have bought homes, who take care of their families, who raise their children in the way that they want to, because Harvard has said, we see you. We want to provide you with opportunity. We see talent in our community, right in our backyard, and we're going to embrace that. So I just want to note how powerful that is, Harvard's connection to and willingness to embrace the community. Harvard has a very high bar, People expect a great deal, and it's an easy institution for people to comment upon. But I think we want to hold up what it is we have done that absolutely demonstrates a true commitment to the community of Greater Boston to provide economic mobility. And you should all be proud of that because you've all gotten involved in that. The second piece is what I like to talk about is the leadership Harvard has shown to think differently. It was years ago, probably at least 10, 12 years ago, when we worked with Harvard. And they said, let's rethink a little bit where you need a 4-year degree to apply for a job. What job do you need that for? And actually, Harvard reclassified thousands of jobs that said, we do not need a 4-year degree to do this role. And let's remember, when we require a 4-year degree, we exclude 83% of Latinos and 78% of African Americans in this country. That's the unintended consequence of what I would call is using degree discrimination when so many young people don't have access to a degree. In fact, I can predict whether you're going to get a degree in this country more by your bank balance than your SAT score, right? That's not appropriate. But Harvard took the lead in reclassifying a whole range of jobs. And I'm so proud today, years later, that we now work with 60 of the largest employers in America through the 110 Coalition. They have committed to reduce 4-year degree requirements from 80% of all jobs down to 50% of their jobs. And that happened because of Harvard's leadership, because of the research that Harvard did on this issue, Professor Fuller, that echoed around this country and changed this country. But Harvard was leading on this years before that effort got real momentum. And it's hard to lead when you're one of the first. So I think you should all be really proud of what Harvard's accomplished there. So we stand now in 2022 in March, and boy, doesn't it feel like a moment in time, people? Right? As we emerge from this pandemic, as we embrace a racial equity movement that is unprecedented, and each one of us thinks, okay, what did I do during this moment on behalf of my community and my country? And we have an opportunity, those in power, those who have decision-making, to decide who gets access to economic mobility going forward, who gets included, who gets opportunity going forward. And that, I think, is one of the legacies of this partnership, is to manifest what I call, and well, what many call the American dream, to allow people a chance to self-actualize, to build their careers, to take care of their families. And it was a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian and writer, James Truslow Adams, who coined and popularized the words, the American dream, in 1931 in his book, The Epic of America. And James Truslow Adams wrote in that book, back in 1931, the American dream is the dream of a land in which life should be richer and fuller and better for everyone according to their ability and achievement. And he went on, the American dream is the dream of a social order in which each man and each woman shall be able to attain to the fullest stature of which they are innately capable and be recognized by others for what they are, regardless of fortuitous circumstance of birth or position. That was in 1931. And I will tell you what we have done together with Harvard, manifest those words, and boy, are they needed now today more than they have ever been needed to maintain our democracy and our civil society. And so what it is we're doing, let me tell you, is it matters. It has impact generationally. And we at Europe are absolutely all in to build, nurture, steward, and promote this partnership, because it's at the source of what will keep us healthy as a country, is when everyone has access to reach their fullest potential. So I say thank you to you, Harvard. We're grateful to you very much. And Pat, for our students and graduates who now work here, who we get to hear from next, we are so, so grateful. So thank you. Thanks for taking a few moments today. And I believe, Etain, we're going to turn to our next speaker.
Yes, but Gerald, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I just, I sometimes have to control my emotions because I get so overwhelmed by the Year Up program, what it stands for, what it has done, and what it can do. And I think all the folks who have indicated in the chat that they're ready to commit, I just want you all to commit. No pressure, but I'm going to be calling you. But before we get to that point, because we still have a half an hour left for the breakfast, what I want to do is, and I'm so choked up, I cannot cry because now I wish I could see you in person and hug you all, but we can't. But so you're hearing the emotions in my voice. But I want to welcome LaShawn Wells as the next speaker. LaShawn was a 2016 Year Up intern. And I'm not going to share what type of relationship we've had, but I just want to say this. He's an amazing, amazing, amazing young man. I have to be reminded that he's a young man and not my child, but I want to say that. And I think, LaShawn, I have high heels on now, so you're not going to be able to bend down when next you see me. I'm going to wear my high heels, because he'd come over and just kind of like pat me on my 5'1" head. But he is an amazing, I just cannot say enough about him. But I want you all to just pay attention to his journey, an amazing journey that Year Up and other folks have allowed him to embark on. LaShawn?
Good morning, everyone. So as an alumnus from February 2016, currently been here at HBS ever since May of 2016. Just to pivot over to the new norm. So it's funny that we're having this meeting almost 2 years ago to this day is when COVID hit and things tended to change for us. So my last day in the office was March 20th of 2020. Ever since then, things have definitely went into a whirlwind. It's been pretty enjoyable having this nice transition, having our intern currently at the time when we were doing the, during COVID, when COVID hit, going from being in office to transferring to being remote. It was very challenging, pretty fun, very engaging. Currently, it's pretty fun now having the same type of situation where we're currently virtually. It's funny, I used to be one to try to push for us to work from home. My manager was never one for it. And it's funny now, my manager is definitely happy with working from home now and seeing that the team was able to transition and seeing that we're able to get the job done, seeing that we're able to still perform at a high level, which is very enjoyable. During my journey at Year Up, it was definitely a very enjoyable journey. I was able to meet a bunch of people like Attain, have a bunch of support systems, such as my manager, Walfred. Since then, I've been able to take on this role as sort of like an overseer of our Year Up interns. So I've been actually dealing very closely with our interns. Prior to coming here, we did not have a financial seat. With Gerald being an alum from here, I thought it was very important for us to get a seat here inside of operations. So push for it. We got a seat here in operations. We've currently had 8 interns come through here and sit here in operations. We've actually had all of our interns be successful with placements of jobs after. We tend to keep the seat open because, like we like to say, Gerald, we lift as we climb. So we try to make sure that we keep pulling people up as we move forward. Currently, we have a very great intern named Juan. Feel like he's in the top running to take my spot. And it feels good to be able to have someone that is able to step up when needed, especially in a time like now where things are definitely up in the air as far as trying to get things under control and transfer over to the new norm. So definitely feels good to have a good team member to be able to jump in and grab things and take control. So definitely feels great. And I definitely appreciate having Juan a part of the team, and feels good to be in this new norm now.
I don't want to be a interfering Year Up mother, but I just want to make sure, LaShawn, you're done, because you know, when we talk, we have a lot to talk about, and I don't want to cut you off.
Yes, ma'am, all done.
You see, I'm going to say this to you. I am amazed by his style. It shows so much. Every time he says, yes, ma'am, I'm like, where did you come from? Where are you from? I absolutely adore you. I absolutely, but it speaks to the caliber of folks who come out of Europe and the caliber of employees who join Harvard and who become a part of Harvard. And I'm so blessed to have him in my life. The next person we're going to hear from is Vaughn. Vaughn, you're my newest addition. And
Hello.
Vaughn is going to tell you about his experience with the law school.
Yes. Thank you, Tane, for having me, and all of you. LaShawn, thank you for those words. Yeah, so I'll just share a bit about my experience at Harvard Law School as a year up intern, and what the shifting of norms has meant for me. So I joined Year Up actually at the beginning of the pandemic. It was I came to Boston from Maryland in May of 2020. It was at a point in my life where I just needed some stability financially, some agency, and the pandemic definitely exacerbated the process. So I ended up moving to Boston and joining Year Up, LC Aspire. And so I was an IT intern, part of the July 2021 cohort, and my internship was at the Harvard Law School. And so post July 2021, I transitioned from an intern into a temp position with the goal of coming into a full-time position, which I have now. And at the time, making that transition, there were a lot of big steps because my entire internship had taken place remotely. And my temp position and hopefully full-time position at the time was going to be fully in person. So there was a lot to kind of figure out. I had to think about commuting, COVID conscious commuting. So, like having masks, testing properly. I'm happy to say I have not tested positive this entire time. Happy about that. But making sure that I was doing that properly. I also needed to learn the campus and the location. I was coming from South Boston, so I was not familiar with Cambridge at all, let alone the Harvard campus. So that was another kind of obstacle to kind of overcome there. And then I also wanted to take advantage of some of the resources that were available at Harvard. There are a lot of different ways to, learn different skills that you might want. I do a lot of creative work, so we have access to LinkedIn Learning and Adobe Creative Suite, Adobe Creative Cloud. And so I just immediately, as soon as I could, started taking advantage of those opportunities. And then I knew once I came into a full-time position that I wanted to try and take classes at the extension school. So I just wanted to be aware of all the resources that were available to me. Another thing that was something to consider while making that transition from remote work to on-site work was making connections and fostering the connections I had already made while working remotely with people who I may or may not be crossing paths with physically. And that was definitely difficult. We have lifted the masking rule on campus recently, but at the time, everyone was wearing masks. So there is that layer that kind of gets in the way of personal interaction. And so we just had to find ways around that. That was things like meeting for lunches if people are comfortable, connecting after our work paths cross, and just trying to build rapport with people where we could. And so once I got a handle of the basics, I wanted to better understand the Harvard environment. And this was, probably one of the more intricate things that I had to, come to understand. Looking from the outside in before I started my internship, and before I started working on site, I looked at Harvard thinking it would be really strict and stodgy. And when I began working in the Harvard environment, I learned quickly that that was not the case at all. Everyone is very welcoming. There's a very inclusive energy about the entire establishment. And, you know, you really get the sense that you can let your guard down and really be yourself. And so that was a really important thing to understand for me. But the thing that I also wanted to or had to comprehend was what I call Harvard's gravitational pull. The fact that, you know, the name and, you know, the stature of the institution, specifically the law school, is such that, you know, a lot of big name people are going to be coming in for different projects, and I'm going to cross paths with people in very important projects, you know, that I need to be able to take seriously. And I need to present my best in those situations. So I've been in the room with Supreme Court Justice Elena Kagan. I have worked on projects with like media moguls. I've facilitated CNN interviews for some of the professors here on campus. So the work itself is very important and it has a lot of eyes on it. And so I needed to reconcile understanding that I could be myself and could, you know, embrace a more relaxed, you know, approach to work in the work environment, but also understanding that everything we do here, you know, needs to be taken very seriously. And, you know, a few of the people who helped me to understand, you know, that phenomenon and you know, just, I'm so sorry. I'm in a room that has like an energy saving light thing. I need to move so that it turns back on. Sorry, one second. Apologies. So where was I? Yeah. So some of the people who helped me to understand, you know, how to, you know, make those two worlds meet were Leah Plunkett, who is my current manager. She was instrumental in my ability to stay on at Harvard long term. She's also the best boss I've ever had to this point. So very thankful for her. Hope O'Rourke, who was one of my managers during internship. I actually had 3, which is a story in and of itself, but I'll tell it later. Hope offered me mentorship and helped me learn nearly the entirety of what my job has become. Lynn Prevost in ITS, she gave me pivotal leadership, answered all of my questions and provided feedback that honestly is the basis of my professional efforts today. Christine Perkins, who gave me incredible advice and invaluable connections by opening the doors to the entire communications department at HLS. And Pratik Patel, who was pivotal in me having the ability to take advantage of opportunities here and stay on long term. You know, so there's a lot of people who I can thank. Special thank you to all of the Year Up staff, all of the teachers, and everyone on the back end who, you know, helped me in a multitude of ways that I just don't have the time to cover right now. But, you know, thank you to all of those people and thank you all for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Vaughn. Vaughn, it's been, Tay and I get emotional too. And
Okay.
It's been my joy and privilege to know Vaughn throughout his time at Year Up and continue our relationship a bit as an alumna of the program. Vaughn, you're very special to me, and it's really a joy to see you continue on your journey and develop into the person and contributor that we know you are and can be. So thank you, Vaughn. So I'm going to now pass the floor to Alexis Duenas, who is a current intern, and she's going to tell you a little bit about her experience now.
Hi, everybody. So, as Alyssa just said, my name is Alexa Duenas, and I am an intern at HBS across the river. in the doctoral program. And a couple of months ago, I was a project management student at Year Up, and I wanted to join the program because I thought that it would be a great opportunity, and I was right. Year Up has helped me learn a lot of things, and a huge example overall would be, like learning how to work from home, because in my time at Europe, I was fully virtual, and maybe an exception of 2 or 3 days that we all got to go in to the office. And it was really challenging because working from home, there's so much that goes into it. And throughout that whole journey, you learn how to self-manage and how to use communication as an asset and a skill. And previously, I thought that communication wasn't like a big deal or even like had such a major impact. And then I come to Europe and my perspective completely changed. So, and now I've learned that I can use communication to not only use it to my advantage, but amplify my skills along with it. And there are so many components to communication and writing. And one of the most important things is being clear and concise. And I think that there's so much importance and so much power with knowing how to get your point across and being organized and speaking confidently. And I would definitely thank my coaches and my instructors for all the guidance that they provided and all the help that they gave me with honing this skill. And now that I'm in internship, I feel really well prepared. And it's not just the skills or the certifications that I was able to earn. It was just overall a really great experience. It's different to say the least, because going from being fully virtual to, being hybrid is it's just different. And with the program, everything had structure and it was difficult to adjust to, but it was really easy to comprehend. And then you come into internship and it's almost like if you're flipping a switch, because the expectations are a little bit looser and it feels almost like you could take a breath of fresh air. And switching from the rigorous Year Up environment and knowing that you have to be on top of your things and knowing that you have to be on time and knowing the expectations and kind of where where the bar is set and where you have to be in order to be successful. And so seeing that and then coming into a whole other environment is very different. And there was so much discipline and an aspect of self-management that went into the program that, we come to an internship and we're ready for anything. Like, it's super exciting. You get to know new people and you get to work in a new environment, and it's a whole other experience. And I would want to thank my manager, Keith, and our team, and they've just been absolutely incredible. And they're some of the nicest people I've ever come across, and they're so understanding. And that makes me feel extremely comfortable because I love the fact that they all encourage me not only to learn, but they also encourage me to get more involved and get comfortable with the idea of asking questions and, tell them to stop talking when I'm completely lost, or allowing myself to be confused and not know everything. And I think it's just great getting the opportunity to put the skills that we've dedicated our time and energy is just amazing. You get to test yourself and you get to see how much you were able to retain in the learning and developing phase. And it's been fun and somewhat challenging, putting those skills to work and then seeing what works and maybe what doesn't work and talking things through and, learning that in the end of the day, the people that you work with, they're just people. And, you develop your own relationships and you learn as you go. And I would rate it a 20 out of 10. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alexa.
Thank you, Alexa. I'm just going to say one thing, and Alyssa, sorry, I apologize for breaking in on your thought. We have 5 more minutes, but I'm going to ask just for your indulgence, because we have our last speaker, who is Michelle Monestein. And Michelle has worked at the university. When I think of someone who is the perfect Year Up manager, perfect champion, perfect coach, perfect mentor, it is Michelle Monestein. And so Michelle, I am hoping folks will stay on even if you run over a minute or two, because I want you to just talk about your experience at Harvard with Year Up and all the folks that you have worked with, who have graduated, who have worked with you in your different departments, who you have referred to me and several other folks across the university. Michelle.
Tout le monde, nom c'est Michelle Monestein. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Monestein. I'm the Director of Administration in the Department of Statistics. I would like to give a shout out to my colleague, Alexis Flores, who is a former Year Up intern who is helping our department and serving as a temp at the current moment, who I consulted with for some of my presentation today. I want to thank FASHR and Attain Cormier for their partnership in the many efforts I have put in with Year Up interns. You can see here I've been managing interns for about 5 years now. And the very first time I tried to develop a pipeline into research administration, and we were successfully able to convert a Year Up intern into a 1-year term appointment, in which they were able to be deployed out to Earth and Planetary Science and MCB, and they were converted into a full-time position in MCB. We were very proud of that effort. We have a talent gap in research administration. It's very difficult to try to find individuals to fill in these roles. And so we figured that training someone within research administration services would have been supportive and helpful in building this pipeline. I no longer work in the Department of Research Administration Services, so I'm working in statistics now. So my focus has shifted, but just to put a bug in some of the managers' ears here who work in departments that need research administration support, we can develop that talent in-house through individuals who engage with research administration. It is possible. But jumping into the content for today, I hope you can see my screen here. Thumbs up if you can. Thank you. There's no need to review the latest journals to be informed that the hybrid workplace is a new norm. You are all living it. However, Ben Weigert from Gallup, in their article, The Future of Hybrid Work, 5 Key Questions Answered with Data from March 15th, 2022, shares the following salient points. Amongst others, remote work is here to stay, and hybrid work is the future for many remote capable employees. Hybrid work helps employees get the most out of their day while ensuring they feel connected to coworkers and the organization. Setting guidelines based on job responsibilities and continually tracking effectiveness of these policies will be critical to leading hybrid teams. It's my pleasure to be in community with you all this morning, especially in discussion of the Year Up program. This morning, I would like to share the following 4 topics with you. Year Up, My Why, a practice of recollection, advice for new managers, and advice for new interns. I am an enthusiastic supporter of the Year Up internship program for many reasons. I have borne witness to the ways the Year Up internship program can change the whole trajectory of someone's life. As a young adult myself, I had family members who participated in the program as interns, and they are now a manager of national and international IT teams and a real estate entrepreneur. They are providing comfortably for their families and are beginning to send their children off to college. Personally, being a product of Boston schools, I could have been one guidance counselor conversation away from choosing a program such as Year Up versus pursuing higher ed and entering the workplace as I did. Over the years, I have had the pleasure of managing 5 Year Up interns. More often than not, I have heard from the interns that going into debt to obtain a degree to gain access to gainful employment wasn't the logical choice for them to make. But with tuition reimbursement as an employee benefit and entry-level positions not requiring a bachelor's degree, why should it be? Let's remove the barrier of entry. Now, today's theme is the changing workplace pivoting to the new norm. I would love to jump into my reflections and advice, but I believe we can have a greater success in developing the structures and support systems needed by these interns by grounding ourselves in a recollection from our young adult years. I've borrowed this recollection exercise from Nolika Radway, who's the Raising Rebels podcast, who's from the Raising Rebels podcast, and she's also the executive director of the Brooklyn Free School, an independent school for young people ages 4 to 18. By reflecting on this era of our lives, our experiences, needs, and unmet needs, we can honor the young worker in ourselves and better connect with the young adults we will be welcoming into our workplace shortly. So I know that we don't have the opportunity to do this the right way, which is actually to talk in community. So I'm hoping that any managers here present today will take this exercise, take a screenshot right now, take a moment. Do this exercise with what I'm suggesting would be your management team. I highly suggest you have, especially in the hybrid workplace, a management team to manage the intern, not just one person. So I'm asking that you take a moment as you prepare for welcoming your new intern and perform this recollection exercise. Please take a moment to think of a story from your youth when you were around 18 to 25, a young adult, and you were just beginning to work. Can you recall a time when you had office culture shock? Can you recall a time when you did not have enough information to complete an assignment? Can you recall a time you made a mistake? What was the outcome? Now, in each scenario, how were you supported? What support would have made a positive difference for you? Again, I'm asking that you perform this with the management team. Now, my advice for new managers, a management team is better than a single manager. Remember, there will be vacations, sick days, or days you are completely swept up by a pending deadline. Who will your intern check in with at those times? Engage your team. Do you have a team member who does not currently have management responsibilities, who's looking to grow and develop? Engage them into this opportunity. What a wonderful opportunity for you to develop your team member as well as an intern simultaneously. Have an in-depth training plan spanning 1 to 2 months on a calendar. It could include one-to-one training from staff, lists of Harvard training portal and LinkedIn learning trainings, and clearly explain the responsibilities broken down by frequency, daily, weekly, and monthly. One challenge, admittedly, can be supplying the intern with sufficient assignments. So communicate your expectations for what they're supposed to do with their unstructured time. Clearly, LinkedIn learnings and Harvard training portal learnings would be supportive during those times. I highly suggest you welcome and reassure them that you're here to support their growth and development, which would include providing a formal orientation, just like you would to an incoming employee. Orient them to the people, the role, the physical space. Welcome them to your team, whether that be traditionally with a welcome lunch or a special shout out in your team meeting. Invite them to meetings, even if it doesn't seem as though it's associated with the work that they're performing. Integrating them into the life of the department is extremely important. Get them involved in the life of the department. My next tip is to inquire what their learning style is. If you can ensure that you're incorporating their learning style into your training process, you'll be helping them in the way they need to be oriented. This one I can't stress enough. You need to break down the perception of the ivory tower or the high polish that comes associated with the Harvard name. Many interns will come with a preconceived notion due to Harvard's reputation that may make them believe they do not belong. This can lead to a high level of anxiety and a fear of making mistakes. Please perform the recollection exercise. Reconnect with your younger and less polished professional self. Share your stories of mistakes you made and how you learned from them. Have high expectations for the interns, but make failure an option and provide safe space to learn from it. Share your authentic self. The management touch should be relationship-based. If you don't really develop a relationship with this individual, you need to help foster trust between both parties, especially with communicating across the multiple channels as well as the hybrid workplace. Developing trust on both parties, that you're an individual that they can come to and that they can be honest with, is truly important. Certainly set expectations on communication, which will be clearly important when we talk about the next portion, which is the multiple channels of communication. I just want to put a plug, most importantly, for this hybrid environment. Communication will always be important. And providing and utilizing all the resources we have here at Harvard University. HIT has a plethora of platforms that we can use. Certainly that one-on-one time in person, face-to-face for those one-on-one meetings in which you can build out those relationships and trust and break down that ivory tower, that high polish is important. Microsoft Office, of course, is great for email, Slack for direct messaging, Jabber for calling, SharePoint for file share and co-editing. And of course, we have Zoom, which you can do video calling, but remember, you can also use Zoom, thank you, Alexis Flores, to actually record trainings in which you're doing so that the student or the intern can go back to these trainings and watch them to help them in their progress. But ultimately, I want to put a plug for Microsoft Teams. It kind of does majority of what we've just discussed above. It does direct messaging, video calls. You can manage tasks and assign tasks to your intern through the process, save files as well as co-edit. I highly suggest developing the management team and the intern a Microsoft Teams platform in which all of that communication can go in. And then also make sure that you are creating a culture wherein which feedback goes both ways. If you are expecting your intern to receive the feedback that you have, you're giving on their performance, make sure that you also ask for feedback on the ways in which you're training, the ways in which you're communicating, the ways in which you are, which modes of communication you are responding in your response time. If you can break down that barrier and ask for feedback yourself, it'll be much more received in a more positive way. And then finally, I want everyone to make sure that you're transparent about the opportunities or lack thereof for conversion within your department. And then ultimately, if it is a situation where there is not an opportunity to convert into a permanent position within the department, that you're doing everything you possibly can to help this young individual in their job search. At about 3 months, halfway point, start reviewing resumes, cover letters, using your network to recommend them for positions and supporting their search through the job portal. Finally, my last slide, I haven't forgotten you interns. My biggest suggestion is to take notes, carry a notebook with you everywhere you go, take notes on procedures, processes, locations of resources, everything, even on your ideas on process improvements. Then reference your notes and any resources you shared in your training. Try to answer your own questions, but also communicate. Ask questions, ask for support, ask for clarification, ask for more assignments, ask how you can help. And then ultimately, when you've been given an assignment, confirming you understand the assignment at the meeting's close by reiterating it in your own way or paraphrasing is extremely supportive in ensuring that both parties know that the assignment is understood. Share your ideas, your vision, your experience, your voice is valued and needs to be heard here. Give your best effort and make note of the assignments you enjoyed. You will be able to use that information to help you determine which path you'd like to continue progressing on in your career. And finally, network. Use your time here to go have lunch with somebody. Ask them about their progress and development, how they got to the role that they're in. There's a wealth of knowledge that you can gain by connecting with your colleagues. That is all that I have for you today. Thank you so much for staying on longer. I really appreciate it. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
I thank you, Michelle. I thank you. I think you've covered it all, because managers who are here, they have a sense of what they need to do. And interns who are now in the program have a sense of what they need to do. I want to be respectful, because I think one of the things that happens on Zoom is that we run from one thing to the other. So some folks have already left, but I want to thank you for being a part of this program, Michelle, and also presenting. And I want to thank everybody who's on this Zoom call today. Alyssa and myself are going to reach out to you. We're going to send you information in terms of the funding sources for the Year Up internship. Also, how we can work with you to get an intern in your organization. I'm looking at the chat, and I'm going to say, because several folks have reached out to us to say, hey, I want an intern. And I'm going to follow up with you on that. And I'm going to make sure you stay committed. And I'm going to pull in people like Michelle, who's going to help you manage your intern. I want to thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. This was a wonderful event. We should have planned it for 2 hours instead of an hour. I'm grateful, I am appreciative, and I welcome any comments that you may have about Year Up, about the program, and how we can make sure that folks are successful. Thank you, thank you, thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. The sun is shining. We have a new beginning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Attain, and thank you for all who participated, behind the scenes, in front of the camera. Listen carefully. Look forward to working more with all of you. Thank you so much for all your support and interest.
Thank you. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.